On this podcast, we have Andrew Sankey in the studio from Pennsylvania. We talk about some epic hunt breakdowns that he filmed the last couple years, a 200-incher in Pennsylvania that was a local legend. Everybody knew about this buck, and also a mega 180 that he shot in Ohio. He's a big buck killer, and we're happy to have him in the Deer Society studio. We also talk about the value of finding big bucks. You can't shoot a big buck if you don't have one to hunt. So searching for big bucks, and also how to gain access. We talk about what's going on this time of year, food plot season, and the deer season just around the corner.
The Deer Society podcast is brought to you by Illusion Hunting Systems, Onyx Hunt, Reveal Cellular Cameras, 10-Point Crossbows, Prime Archery, G5 Broadheads, Osseo Gear, Raw Frozen Scents, and HHA.
Well, Andrew, welcome to the Deer Society studio, man.
Thanks for having me.
What's
here?
Long day for you guys yesterday, huh?
Yeah, the Microsoft outage yesterday, our flights were canceled, and we just jumped in the car and drove 12 and a half hours out here yesterday. We drove all day yesterday to get here.
Well, I know you guys had a long day and long night. We just got done shooting some hunt breakdowns that are going to be released this fall, and some epic hunts that you've had over the last couple of years. So I want to talk about those. But I want to kind of give people, kind of introduce you to our audience and some of the Deer Society listeners. So Andrew's from Pennsylvania. Just tell me a little bit about your background, how you got into hunting, how you hunt now, and just a little bit about you.
Well, my family, they all hunt, and, my dad, he's not really a big deer hunter. So he's more of a meat hunter. And for me, I started bow hunting, and, I harvested my first buck with a bow when I was 14. And ever since then, I just, had the itch to chase big deer and just to learn everything I possibly could about deer hunting. And over the years, I just chipped away at becoming a better and better hunter. And, just kept pushing the envelope on what I was capable of doing, and just trying to achieve goals and continue to set higher and higher goals for myself. And it's kind of brought me to where I'm at right now.
Well, I have heard that some of the best deer hunters are bred kind of there in Western Pennsylvania. That's where I'm from as well. So I don't know. There's something about that Western PA region. It breeds a lot of big buck killers, I think.
Yeah, I'm from Southern Minnesota. I stand true. We're good here too.
Well, Pennsylvania. I mean, growing up in Pennsylvania, and especially once I got older and started hunting other states, I really realized that growing up, I always, I hated hunting Pennsylvania because I'd see people hunt the Midwest, and, kind of jealous of it, because, every time I'd find a big buck, it seemed like someone would mess me up, or, the amount of hunters we have in Pennsylvania compared to other states is just crazy. It's hard to, get deer to maturity. And then once you do find mature deer, a lot of times you have, a lot of competition for as other hunters, and it's just a very difficult state to hunt. But I also feel like it's made me the hunter that I am today. Yeah, I had to work extra hard to kill quality deer in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. I haven't hunted in Pennsylvania for quite a while, but growing up, learning how to hunt there as a kid, it's a whole different strategy. But there's a lot to it. You're not only hunting the deer and trying to strategize around them, but a lot of times strategizing around small pieces and other people. And there's a lot of variables that come into play. And I think that's cool. A lot of that, you can take to other states, and
really good.
Yeah. Kind of helps you refine your skills a little bit on a different level.
Oh yeah. Once I started hunting the Midwest and stuff, and, using the strategies and stuff I use at home, and just, you really got to hone your skills hunting a state like Pennsylvania. So once you get out of that state and start hunting other states where, there's not as many hunters and pressure, and it definitely worked to my advantage.
No doubt. Well, I want to kind of kick this over to Brian here, and kind of talk about just how you got in contact, how we all ended up here and with the Deer Society and Illusion. You obviously have a track record of killing some giant bucks, a 200-incher that we just broke down from last year in Pennsylvania, and then obviously another giant deer, and just a record of big bucks. But Brian, why don't you let everybody know kind of how you got in touch with Andrew and how we kind of all ended up here?
Well, Andrew reached out to us on social media saying, hey, check out this buck that I shot. I got it on video. It was your 200-inch buck from this last season, the Pennsylvania buck, and just kind of started a conversation with him, seeing kind of what he was just talking about, his background. And he then told us that he shot it with the extinguisher. Then he shows us the footage, and I was just like, wow, we gotta talk to this guy a little bit more. And I mean, the quality of you doing it as a self-filming hunter is outstanding. Because I mean, not for people that listen to this, the people that self-film, they know how much more of a challenge that is when you're running a camera and your bow at the same time, especially for archery hunters. But when you're putting down this footage on this quality of deer, I was blown away and immediately started talking to the guys within the shop here, and we had to get you in. So
I appreciate you guys having me. It's an honor.
Yeah, it's been cool to get to know you here, and you know, I always love. I joked when you came in, like just down home hits me in the warm feels of hearing that Pittsburgh accent. It's always good to hear that, being in the Midwest now for a long time. But you know, let's talk a little bit about the 200-incher that you killed in Pennsylvania last year. As we know, those deer are not by any means around every corner anywhere in the country, let alone in Pennsylvania like that. You know, you obviously killed them using the extinguisher, but broke down the hunt here just a little bit ago, and it's going to be an epic story. Can't wait for you guys to see it this fall. But why don't you kind of walk us through a little bit of that story and just kind of give people a preview of what they might see coming up?
Well, Brutus, you know, he was definitely a deer that a lot of people knew about. I mean, a deer that caliber in Pennsylvania, it's word gets around quick. And, you know, obviously it eventually got to me, and, you know, it was a deer that was, you know, in not only my home state, but like my hometown. And it was a deer that, you know, I knew it was going to be hard to kill, but I knew that like if I found an opportunity to get in on this deer and kill him, that it was going to be like a milestone for, you know, for me. And just it was something I was definitely, you know, wanting to pursue very hard, you know.
You know, when you found out about that deer, you know, what kind of steps did you take? Like, you know, what was your mindset like? Did you think that you ever had a chance of seeing him, let alone killing him, or was it something that you were confident in? Like, how did you approach that? And then, you know, what were your first steps to kind of gaining access around that deer?
When I first started looking for the deer, like I knew about the deer and trying to locate him and where he was at, I honestly didn't think that, you know, I was going to have an opportunity at the deer, you know, especially once I realized how many other guys were hunting the deer. I knew the deer was going to be pressured. But my main goal was to figure out, you know, where was this deer's hiding spot at? Because with that much pressure, a deer of that, you know, age and caliber, he's got to have somewhere to hide that's, you know, probably off the beaten path, or something that, you know, something that a hunter would overlook. And where I end up killing him is somewhere I overlooked at first. I mean, I looked for this deer for almost a solid year with no pictures, I didn't, you know, I just had an area. That's all I had. So I had my work cut out for me. It's a big area, a lot of, you know, vast, you know, land. And it was definitely tough. And, you know, after the first year looking for him, you know, going into the 2023 season, my hopes weren't very high until, you know, pictures started, you know, popping up, and then started talking to some other people about the deer. And then I kept getting closer and closer and figuring out, just kept putting the pieces of the puzzle together. And until I finally honed in on them, and then finally got my own pictures, my own videos of them, and then it was just go time from there.
That's awesome. So, and when you killed him, he ended up scoring what, 201 and 7/8?
Yeah, Buckmaster scored him 201 7/8.
Yeah, just an absolute giant and heck of a deer. And
yeah,
you know, I think maybe what would be cool is if we pluck a little segment out of the hunt breakdown and you kind of share it, because that's kind of, again, the reason we're all here. So you talked about how this deer acted when you saw him, and then what you did to kind of bring him within bow range. Can you kind of walk through that little little segment from when like that deer stands up and then like what he was acting like and how you called him in?
Yeah, well, that morning, you know, I slipped in, you know, 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning with the Novix, did a hanging hunt, planned on an all-day sit, and he was actually in there that morning tending a doe, and had a little buck come in, jump up his doe, and he stood up 60 yards in front of me, and, you know, it was just like, when he stood up and turned his head, it was, things started happening very quick, and, you know, first thing I did was, you know, I realized what was going on. I assessed the situation, realized he was getting up out of his bed to run this little buck off of his doe. And so immediately I started, you know, judging his body language and seeing, you know, I knew he was in an aggressive mood, and he was coming in to run this buck off. And, you know, that's when I just reached for my extinguisher, and I, you know, just used his emotions against him. And as he was running that little buck off and, you know, running through that river bottom brush, he kept losing that little buck because, you know, little buck had small horns. He could dip through that river bottom brush and get away from him. And he, you know, Brutus was so wide, he couldn't run through it. And he was just like tearing brush up trying to get to this buck. And eventually I got his attention with the extinguisher, and he just came right in.
That's awesome. Yeah, one of the coolest clips in that video is like, and you said there was more, but there's one section where like you can see this buck, and he's got like a whole tree in his rack.
Yeah, because he was so wide, and that river bottom brush was just so close together, he couldn't get through it. So he just like plowed his way through it. He came out the other side, and he literally has a whole tree in his horn. He's just like turning his head, like this big tree hanging up. And I'm just literally in the stand, just like losing my mind, just like coming unglued.
That's awesome. It sounds like a folk tale. Like, what deer's, you know, the deer over there, that legendary buck that carries the tree around in his rack.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I should get like some T-shirts made with a tree hanging up.
I like that. You better trademark that. I like it a lot. No, that's awesome. So epic hunt breakdown that's going to be coming out this fall. So watch for that. We also broke down another hunt that is just as cool with another giant deer, 180 some inch, typical 10-pointer, right? From Ohio. Yeah. You know, that was a cool strategy. You know, one of the coolest things that I pulled from that was just like your ability to adapt, set up one way, you know, realized it wasn't working, wait for the right time, switch the tactic, and, you know, be able to go in there and execute. Can you talk to me just like in generally about that, you know, mindset of when you're approaching a situation, whether it's in Indiana, Ohio, Pennsylvania, New York, wherever it may be, just as a hunter, that ability to go in and just adapt and go in and hunt a deer when the right time is?
Yeah, I mean, it's all about what part of the season it is too. Like as the season progresses, you have to adapt to, you know, what the deer are doing. And, you know, that specific buck, you know, my goal was early, try to kill him on food. And the piece that I had, you know, I didn't have the ability to put a food plot in there. So, you know, I had to bait, and, you know, Ohio's a bait state, and, you know, the neighbors were baiting, they were hunting that deer too. So kind of had to hunt the bait or had to bait to keep them there. But I, you know, figured out quick that I probably wasn't going to kill the deer on bait. So then, you know, I backed out. But, you know, as far as hunting other states and stuff like that, I use the same mindset. You know, no matter what state I'm hunting, I'm always assessing the situation, the deer, what the deer is doing, and then trying to adapt. You know, if it's early season, I'm focused on food. You know, you come into late October, you know, you're starting to, you know, switch more towards the rut, and in late season, you're going to, you know, switch back to food, you know, stuff like that. You have to be able to adapt. And, you know, if something's not working, you know, I'm going to back out and then regroup, make a new game plan, and then, you know, just keep trying to pursue the deer.
How much calling do you do in general? You know, we have two different hunts that we broke down today. Obviously, one was a calling scenario. The other one was not a calling scenario. How do you as a hunter decide, okay, now's a good time to call, this is not a good time to call? Like, walk me through that.
As far as calling goes for me, I mean, this kind of goes back to also growing up in Pennsylvania, where you have a lot of hunters. And, you know, you figure there's more hunters in Pennsylvania, you have more guys blowing grunt calls, rattling, doing stuff like that. So I'm, especially at home, I'm not usually I call sparingly, because I think sometimes, you know, I've blown grunt calls at deer in Pennsylvania and had them take off running the other way. You know, but I mean, so for me, like, I want to see the deer. I want to be able to judge their body language and make a decision whether, you know, I'm reaching for my black rack or my extinguisher. You know what I mean? I don't like calling blind, but, you know, that's kind of my strategy and how I go about calling. I want to be able to see the deer, judge their body language, and then just, you know, decipher what kind of calling I want to send that deer's direction.
Yeah, it's an effective way to do it.
What do you think about that, Brian? Is that kind of your strategy, or you approach it a little differently?
It depends on the time of the season. And here in the Midwest, you can get away with blind rattling a lot more than blind calling. You hit that perfect window of, it's usually right around October 25th to the second week in November. You bang those black racks together, and it's not uncommon to call in 10 different bucks in an evening. But that being said, both of these hunts that you did the breakdowns on today were on much smaller parcels.
Yeah.
I mean, these are both very small parcels. I mean, one of them was, 13 acres, and the other one was under that.
Yeah, it was 10. Yeah. So,
and I mean, you got a 200-inch buck and a 185-inch buck on 25 combined acres, two different states. It's impressive. So having that strategy, being in the area that you're at, I think that goes a long way in saying how effective it works for those different situations.
Oh, yeah.
One of the things that I want to ask you is, so both of those bucks we broke down, so the 180 and then 200, you know, one was one that you had heard was in the area. The other one is you were out working and you saw this buck. So, you know, neither of them were on pieces that you had permission on originally, right?
No.
So how did you go, and then what was your process like getting permission to an area where you even had a chance to hunt one of those bucks?
I mean, we typically, you know, my style of hunting, I like every year I'm out looking for new spots. And this is where, like, you know, your Onyx, I'm obsessed with Onyx. Like I use that stuff like crazy because, you know, it helps you figure out where to go to even ask permission. And then, so once I locate a buck, if I don't have permission in that area, or if I do have permission, I'm looking for other areas, you know, other properties in that area, you know, to get permission. And, you know as well as I know, getting permission sometimes can be very hard. Yeah. So it's kind of a numbers game. The more doors you knock, the more you ask, you know. So that's kind of how I go about it. Just try to be as polite as I can and you know, just try to get in places, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, it's obviously worked pretty well for you so far.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a sweet talker, I guess.
There you go. Maybe we'll have to call it one of the hunt breakdowns, sweet talker.
Right? Yeah. I mean, getting permission to get in places, that's a big step to killing big deer.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think a lot of guys, you know, they get hooked on a piece of property and they just, you know, they'll hunt them same property every year. Well, if you're trying to kill a giant deer every single year, I don't care, you know, like your piece of property isn't going to produce a giant every year. So for me, it's like, if I want to kill a giant every year, I got to be looking for new places every year. So I spent a lot of my time throughout the summer knocking on doors, finding areas where there's big deer, and try to get as many, you know, as much permission as I can, even if it's a small parcel, because, you know, you don't always have to have a big chunk of property. You just have to have the right piece of property in the right spot.
For sure. You know, that's something that Ben Rising always said. He's like, you know, if you want to kill a 200-inch deer, you got to have a 200-inch deer to hunt.
You got to, I mean, if you want to kill a big deer, you got to be hunting where there is one.
Yep.
So if you're sitting in a stand hoping to kill a 200-inch deer, there's not one in the area, you're wasting your time.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
No doubt about that. No doubt. So you're obviously a busy guy, out in the field a lot. What are you doing? What's this time of year look like for you? So, you know, we're into the late July season's really, believe it or not, you know, coming up just around the corner. So, you know, what are you doing this time of year with limited time? You know, how are you prepping for the upcoming season?
Right now, I just typically, you know, I'm out looking for spots and, you know, deploying cameras and trying to, you know, find a deer to hunt. You know, I'm a working man. I don't get a whole lot of time to get out there. I'm kind of a weekend warrior this time of year. You know, I work pipeline. So, you know, typically the only time I have is on the weekends, you know, to get out there and look for deer. And yeah, I'm just, you know, scouring the areas where I found big deer in the past, trying to get permission in places and just putting out as many cameras as I can. And then once I find a big one, then I hone in on it.
Yeah. Game on then.
Yeah. Yeah. The biggest thing is finding one. Then I kind of put all my eggs in one basket, so to speak, and just go after them.
Sure. Brian, how about you? What are you doing this time of year? I know I've been busy with food plots and lots of different things here in the shop, but what have you been up to?
Knocking on the doors that are right next to your properties usually.
Well, that's for sure.
No, it's a lot of habitat stuff right now. Getting a lot of fields done. I mean, in this area of Minnesota has had, it depends on which way you want to look at it. We've gotten a ton of rain this year. Some farms, fantastic with the amount of moisture that we've got. Other farms completely flooded out, and we're going to be starting from scratch. I mean, Connors, for instance, completely flooded out. Don't know when that's going to dry. But the fields that are high ridge tops right now, all those perennial plots that we had in the spring are as good as you can imagine them being. So, getting a lot of the food plots in. We're right around the corner now from fall plots. That'll be starting here next week. Getting some fields prepped. All of them have been sprayed now for the most part. Got to get in on your pieces here now. So,
yeah.
But yeah, all the fall plots are going to be going in over the next 2-3 weeks, and then I mean, pretty much this is deer season already for us. So we're going to be in the woods from now till the end of the year. It's game time.
Yeah. For sure. Andrew, what have you been seeing for deer growth out there, kind of that part of the country? Does it seem like deer putting on inches, growing good? And
oh yeah, they're pretty well developed. I mean, you're starting to really see what they're going to be.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
it seems like some of our, we had quite a few deer that seemed like early this year developed really quickly.
Very quickly.
Early, yeah.
Quicker than past years. And I know we kind of had a weird winter here. It was super mild.
Yeah.
But we had a bunch of deer shed early, even with the mild winter too. And I don't know what the reason is for that. And then potentially the early growth here too. But it seems like we've had a lot of deer, here and seen through Iowa as well. Just a lot of deer with really good early quick growth.
Yeah. I'm seeing some deer even back home that are pretty well developed already.
Yeah.
I've always heard that theory that if you have a mild winter previous year, the following year, the antler growth is absolutely phenomenal.
Probably because the deer are healthier.
Well,
I mean, they don't have to battle the elements as much in the winter, and they're starting their growing season off, way healthier.
Well, I think they can, when they're shedding their antlers, they're not attributing all that energy to their body staying healthy. Like you were just saying, they can then once the new antlers start to come up, all of that energy is getting forced up into their head, and they blow up.
Yeah. Versus replenishing their body from the winter.
Exactly. Yeah.
Andrew, do you have the opportunity to do any food plot stuff?
Yeah, my dad owns a property in New York, and we actually just put in 3 acres of clover, and then we're coming back in, and we're gonna do probably about an acre of brassicas here in the next couple of weeks.
Nice.
And we're probably gonna do some screening and stuff like that. So
nice.
Yeah, we're getting stuff set up.
Good deal.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of what we're getting into right now is a busy time. You mentioned that we're going to be getting into fall plots here soon, getting everything sprayed and ready to roll. But right now, really through the next 2-3 weeks is kind of the prime time to start getting your fall plots in. Brian, what all are you planting this year? What's that food plot strategy look like for you?
I got a handful of seed varieties of brassicas that are not really well known, but testing out a handful of them, seeing what browse pressures are. But I mean, from what I've used in the past with the primetime systems by Illusion, I'm going with that on all of my brassica fields. I know you had a lot of success in that north field here this last year, and the growth, the rapid speed of the growth, along with the fertilizer systems that we produce with those. You're hard pressed to find better results in such a quick fashion, and it's really about giving the plants what they need when they need it. And when we've got the moisture available like we have this year, it's a recipe for really good success coming into the fall.
Tell you what I've kind of been impressed with is my easy green plots. Like we went in and frost seeded this spring. Yeah. Even in some spots that I typically plant brassicas, I'm a big brassica guy. I love the primetime blend. I mean, it's proven itself the last couple of years, big time. But a couple of these spots that, man, we just have awesome stands of clover that are established now because we frosted them in the spring, and they are money. So that's what I'm trying to do, is strategize that a little bit now too, and see what I want to keep in clover and what I want to do in prime time or for potentially 4 seasons.
Well, and I haven't had you out on the family farm in a while, but we took down 3.5 acres of transition plots between our destination food plots, all in timber. Just about every other tree took it down, uprooted it, got the root ball out of there, cleaned out the floor matter, whether it was sticks, branches, down fallen trees, and broadcasted easy greens throughout all of that. Now this is all, I mean, literally 100% shade. And that clover is anywhere between 8 and 15 inches tall. It's absolutely incredible. But when the deer are utilizing brassica systems versus the corn that we have planted out there and traveling throughout there, we're kind of forcing them now through these different travel zones where we can set up on them and catch them in between, especially during the rut. When those does are out there feeding, regaining those proteins, it's a very good utility if you have really hidden food plots and have them in the shade, getting that easy greens in. And I mean, I planted that in May 15th and it's 15 inches tall in spots. I mean, it wasn't even frosty. It was late planted. We had so much work to do on the timber that I had low hopes for it. But now that I've seen it, I'm just like, wow.
Yeah. Andrew, you've obviously had a lot of success in the past couple of years. If I were to ask you if you had one piece of hunting advice that you could give to somebody that was listening, what would it be?
One piece of advice, I would say you got to hunt where there's a big one. If you want to kill a big deer, we going back to that same topic from earlier, is, if you're going to kill a big one, you got to hunt where is one, and that's the biggest thing,
Yeah. Brian, I'm going to throw you the same question.
If you have limited land, I mean, I talk to a lot of people, this, but if you have limited land and you're stuck on one property.
You talk to a lot of people?
No.
You like to talk?
No.
Sorry, go ahead.
If you're stuck on one piece of property and you don't have multiple properties, or you're not knocking on doors and don't have time to knock on doors, do what you can to optimize that property with a habitat that the deer need that's going to keep them in the area. Providing food, bedding, thicken up some spots. Water sources are huge. I'll always be an advocate for building in water holes. But giving them what they need when they need it, it's going to help you out a long ways. I mean, you might not have a 200-incher that you're chasing, but you can bring in quality deer if you have a quality piece of property that they can live on.
Oh, absolutely.
I think I've said this before, and I think, Andrew, your 2 hunts that we broke down really can attest to this. And it's pay attention to what your deer are doing and wait until a deer is ready to be killed to go in and kill them.
Absolutely.
Don't overpressure it. I mean, you went and killed that 200-incher on the first sit on that property, right?
First sit of the year.
The 185, it was the first time you went in and hunted that stand, right?
That was first time in that stand, yep.
Yeah.
And I hung that stand beginning part of the season, beginning part of October, and then didn't hunt it one time till November the 1st. So my first, I waited till I knew that stand was super close to that deer. And, I hung it for like a last resort. Like I was going to go in tight and try to kill him, but I stayed out of there until it was the absolute perfect time to go in there and harvest that deer. So, I mean, intrusions, everything. Yeah. You do too much intrusion, game's over.
Yeah. Yeah, you got to wait for that right window and let that intel do the work for you a lot of the time. You said, was a couple days before you had got a daylight picture of that buck close to there.
Yeah, and that was the 20th of October, and that was the first daylight picture I had of that deer from the moment season came in until then. So, I mean, and I hunted, I think 4 or 5 times through, end of September through October. Mm-hmm. And then I actually backed out probably, I think it was like this first or second week of October. I just backed out. I didn't hunt for 2-3 weeks. I just kept going in there and and you know, putting out bait just to keep them there, and also, you know, just waited for my cameras to tell me when it was go time.
Yeah. I know a lot of us like our treetop therapy come fall. It's relaxing to be out there, but if you blow up a stand and you're sitting in a stand time after time after time,
Yeah.
you're not going to have the experiences that you were able to come across.
Yeah, it's hard to do, to back out like that, sit and wait. You know, you have a deer that caliber, you know, you want to get in there and hunt them. You think, you know, but sometimes hunting them a lot is not the right thing to do. You know, sometimes you got to back out and wait for the right time. And you know, when it comes to me chasing big deer, I'm very meticulous on when I'm going in, how I'm going in, you know, wind direction, scent control, all that stuff. And that's, you know, that's a big, you know, key to success.
Yeah, it all plays a part.
Yep.
For sure. For sure. Well, man, we appreciate you coming up, making the drive, you and your girlfriend coming up here, making the drive to Pennsylvania. Or from Pennsylvania. Guys listening, epic hunt breakdowns coming this fall. Really big bucks, really great content, and really good strategy in those. That's the coolest part for me is hearing those different strategies and everything that went into it. Obviously, well deserved. Definitely look for more from Andrew. Glad to have you on the team, man. We're gonna wrap this up, but yeah, I just appreciate you being here.
I appreciate you guys having me.
Absolutely. Well, if you guys are watching on YouTube, make sure you subscribe. Check out the Deer Study app. Lots of great videos on there. Hunt breakdowns are getting ready to kick off here just in a couple weeks. So season is coming. Get out there, get your food plots in, and thanks for tuning in.
The Deer Society podcast is brought to you by Illusion Hunting Systems, Onyx Hunt, Reveal Cellular Cameras, 10-Point Crossbows, Prime Archery, G5 Broadheads, Osseo Gear, Raw Frozen Scents, and HHA.